to Brian with the Joint Religious Legislative Council. And if Brian could join us, if you could please pronounce your last name. I'm not even going to do it.
Thank you,
because R's become H's. What? Rushi, I could have done that. Okay. Brian Rushi, if you could please state your name and who you represent for the record, please, and provide your 2 to 3 minutes of testimony.
And I do have a handout, Mr. Chair, for the committee.
Okay, if a page could pass the handout out, that'd be wonderful.
I'm Brian Rushi, Executive Director of the Joint Religious Legislative Coalition. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify. We believe that every budget is a moral document, and we also think that taxes are the price that we pay not only for civilization but for a good society. Our coalition historically has had two main principles in our tax statements. First, that revenues be adequate to the task of funding social infrastructure, education, and basic human needs, and that secondly, the revenue be raised fairly, that is based on ability to pay. We actually think that these two features enhance our ability to be a prosperous people. We think that our budget crisis is largely due to an insufficiency of revenue. We rely heavily on the price of government analysis. This page will look familiar to you, I'm sure. It's from the forecast that comes out, and you always get a copy of this report about the price of government. What we've done here is we've charted it over time for 2 decades. And there are ups and downs in this graph, but I think you would agree that over time, the general trend has been downward. And forecasted to fiscal year 15, we would be reaching almost a historic low in the price of government. And I think it's interesting to note in the price of government that a 1% swing in this statistic represents $2.2 billion, or 4.4 over the course of a biennium. Just a very small swing in the overall price of government would go a long way if it were directed to the general fund to fill this $6.2 billion problem. We also think the tax system needs to tilt a little bit more towards fairness, and we rely heavily on the tax incidence study. We're looking forward to the new report that should come out the first half of March. But we rely on the report that's in front of us. And I think it's very fair to ask upper income people to pay the same rate as people do in the broad range of incomes in the middle. And they're currently not. They're paying less than most of the households in the state. We've also spent some time looking at Minnesota's business climate, and we understand now that Minnesota now ranks 16th in terms of state and local taxes as a percent of personal income. And we're 33rd in state and local revenue as a percent of aggregate personal income. We're also noting that the Ernst & Young report and the Council on State Taxation.
Mr. Rush, if you could wrap it up, please.
Sure, be happy to. That Minnesota now ranks amongst the 16 lowest taxing states in the nation. The most important reason that we're here is because we have already seen the first salvo in what is in the governor's budget in terms of funding reductions that land in painful ways on people that rely on state programs for income, for child care, for welfare to work supports, and for anti-poverty programs across the state. We support the governor's revenue-raising devices because we agree that the budget should not be balanced largely on the backs of the poor, and we think it puts an unfair burden on people with the least ability to pay. I appreciate very much the chance to bring this message this morning, and I would like to pledge to work with every member here because I think this is the biggest problem that I've ever seen, and I want to be part of the solution and would stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Representative Bills and then Dabney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rushi, with the JRLC, do you have any studies also, and I appreciate your testimony, but do you look into the morality or the moral implications of expanding a monetary base and that actually reduces the purchasing power of the working poor? I'm just curious if you have ever in your studies done any research on that.
On monetary policy?
Russia.
Yeah. The answer would be no. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Representative, the answer would be no. Not per se.
Representative Bills?
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one other thing is have you ever done studies on the moral implications behind debts, a debt load or debt burden on society as well at the state or federal level?
Mr. Rushy?
Mr. Chair, there's some tangential things we've talked about debt, but I don't think it's going in the vein that you're talking about.
All right. Okay, thank you. I was genuinely curious, so thank you, Mr. Rushy, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Bills. Representative Dabney, Wardlow, and Downey. Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rushy, I couldn't quite hear part of your testimony, and I thought you said that Minnesota now had the 16th lowest tax rate in the nation. And I thought we were like 52nd out of 50 states top. Can you clarify? Because I couldn't hear.
Yeah,
Mr. Rushy.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Dabney, it comes from the Ernst & Young report, Council on State Taxes. It says 2009 report that we're among the 16 lowest taxing states in the nation. The source for that, interestingly enough, is Positively Minnesota, which is a section of the DEED website. This is not material that's changed in the last month because of an administrative change. This is the state's effort to make an argument for why Minnesota is a great place to do business. And if you go to Positively Minnesota, it's replete with information about how we compare with other states on all kinds of indicators: property tax load on businesses, per capita income, taxes as a percent of per capita income. And they put this report up there that shows that we're amongst the 16 lowest taxing states in the nation. But what's far more fascinating is use their calculator and look at various economic indices and compare them to Iowa and to Illinois and to North Dakota and South Dakota. Minnesota's got a great story to tell, and it's largely based on the productivity of our workforce and the investment that we make in our people. This is our strong card. And I'm convinced, and our coalition is convinced, that if we do a cuts-only budget, we will do irreparable harm to the quality of our workforce. And we will lose competitive advantage. So I think this is a struggle for whether we break out from the pack and poise ourselves in a better place for the recovery. That's what I think that this real issue is about.
Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ernst & Young, they're like accountants, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Rushy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Representative Wardlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rushy, thank you for your testimony. I think it's very important that you note that every budget is a moral document. I would say every law is related to something moral or some moral precept in some way or another. But you also say that the taxes we pay are the price that we pay for a good society. Do we pay, as members of society, anything else for a good society?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wardlow, I think it's all about our life work and our roles as citizens and the way that we contribute to community through our work and our volunteerism and the taxes we pay and the gifts we make and the way we reach out to one another. I would say that government is just one way that we enhance the caring that we show for one another, but it's an important and indispensable device.
Representative Wardlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rushy. So, government, as you said, is one factor in creating a good society. Is it better than, if you're trying to create a good society, for an impersonal bureaucracy to take care of the needs of your neighbor or a family member, or perhaps the neighbors and family members surrounding that person with needs?
Mr. Rushy.
Well, Mr. Chairman and Representative Wardlow, I think when any human being sees another person in trouble or in pain or sick, we reach out. And there's something absolutely moral about that. That charitable impulse to be kind to one another is pretty much the glue that holds us together. But there's a matter of justice too. And it's not a good thing to change institutional arrangements to the extent that you have more and more people desperate, so that people that are advantaged can be kind. I mean, I think you need to ask the question about who is that arrangement really for? Justice, I would argue, is a very elusive goal, but that doesn't mean we should shirk from the pursuit of a situation where more people live in the mainstream, shop at Cub, don't go to the food shelf, sleep at home, not in the church basement. I think we need to pay a lot of attention to that.
Representative Wardlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rushi, have you considered how taking $4 billion out of the private sector and putting it into the hands of bureaucrats and politicians to spend for government programs might stifle innovation and cause stagnation with regard to innovation, the kind of innovation, kind of free enterprise that is personified by a couple of the testifiers that were here before, Ms. Soroka and Ms. Berg. And would you deny them fruits of their labors and the societal goods that they talked about?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wardlow, if I thought $4 billion was being wasted, I would totally agree with you. But we have in Minnesota a track record of, in general, since World War II, of outperforming the nation in terms of per capita income growth, unemployment, business location, business growth, all kinds of good economic indicators, because we've been a fairly high tax, high service state, and we've invested in our people in important ways, and that has actually given many of us a platform. And I didn't even mention higher ed, higher ed, commitment to higher ed, commitment to K-12. That's given us a platform for a lot of families to do real well. And I just don't think of government bureaucracy as an empty black box. I think this state, and I've lived in other states, I've lived in 2 other states, we've done things well here. And my concern is that we keep tearing it down, and we've got a strong argument to make for how this can be the best workforce in the nation and the best place to do business. And I think we should stop tearing it down.
Representative Wardlow.
One final follow-up question then, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rushi, have you ever studied or considered or done any analysis of how increasing expenditures on government programs to serve those with needs and through welfare programs, healthcare, et cetera, whether and how it corresponds to private donations to charities that serve those same functions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I understand the question. Is it the level of... Please.
Maybe I can clarify.
Wardlow.
Have you ever considered and thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Rushi, have you ever considered or analyzed the question of whether increasing revenues spent on government programs affects or causes donations to private charities serving similar functions to decrease or increase?
Mr. Rushi.
Mr. Chairman, I'll have to pass on that. I don't know that is a relationship that I've looked at.
You've not looked at that question?
I can give you anecdotal. I'm sorry, Mr.
Chairman.
I can give you anecdotal evidence of a place where maybe public expenditures have started at something in a nonprofit which attracts philanthropic dollars to make something happen. I can also think of the reverse, where the philanthropic community has said, hey, let's go in this area and see if we can do something about housing or something. And then the public sector goes, oh, we've got a nice piece of infrastructure coming out of the nonprofit sector. Let's put our piece in. I mean, I think that Minnesota probably, because we have a fairly enlightened civic sector, probably does more of that sort of synergy between nonprofit and public sector than most other places. It's been pretty healthy by and large. I think we really look to each other for opportunities and advantage to leverage dollars and make things happen.
Representative Wardlow.
I'm sorry, just one thing you said sparked one additional question. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Rushi. You said that we have a relatively enlightened civic, I assume you're saying public sector. Mm-hmm. Do you trust this enlightened public sector more than you trust the people that elected them?
Mr. Rushi.
Well, I guess I would say that this problem, this $6.2 billion problem, is so big that it's going to take everybody pulling oars in the same direction, public sector, private sector, whatever. And I hope we trust each other. You know, you're the manifestation of the electorate. The governor's budget, I think, is a manifestation of the electorate, and I'm mindful of the fact that 56% of the public, of the voting public, voted for governor candidates that said they were going to have to raise taxes to meet this hole. Both candidate Horner and candidate Dayton said that, and they together, I think it was 56. So, I mean, I don't want to parse this too much other than to say we've got to all be part of the solution. And, you know, we've already seen how the Dayton proposal is going to land pretty tough on low-income people. There's a lot of painful cuts in there. Anyway, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Wardlow?
No further.
Okay, we have, for testifiers yet today, we have Mr. Rushy, Steinhoff, Knudsen, Thorson, Redke, Smith, and Rice. Before we get into the folks that have concerns, to Mr. Rushy, we have Downey, Knuth, Kiffmeyer, and Runbeck. For quite a while, yeah. Representative Downey?
I'll pass.
Representative Knuth?
Bless you.
That was not out of order, Representative Rukovian. Representative Knuth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Rushy. I just wanted to dig in a little bit on one comment you made. I had a town hall meeting last night, and the state demographer was kind enough to come out and talk to us. We had a good turn, about 100 people, and one of the things he talked about really focusing on for our state's long-term economic future was our productivity in our workforce is being really an important part of the economic future of this state. And so you mentioned it a little bit, and I just wanted you to expand a lot on it more and how you see the governor's tax proposal or his budget proposal relating to the long-term productivity of the state's workforce and what kind of work your group has done or what kind of thought your group has on that.
Mr. Rushy?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Knuth, when our tax task force did our research in our paper, what struck us was that Minnesota had done some things differently from most other states, and that we decided in a couple points of our history, actually going back to the 1930s and then again shortly after World War II and then again in the 1970s, to make sort of bold investments in education, and that it paid handsomely, I think, as a result. Now, I think if you and I have heard some of the same things coming from the state demographer and from the state economist, we probably can't use the same type of tool as broadly applied. We have to be more strategic. And so I think, you know, continuing our commitment to education and to make sure that we stamp out early school failure, to invest in young children, to invest in higher education, to invest in lifelong learning, and the connection between the labor market and the community colleges are real key policy levers that we need to be on. And then I think to make more opportunity available to people who don't have a lot of job skills, to not back off on training programs for people that are hard to employ, who need to find that foothold in the workforce. So those would be the things that we thought were extremely important and require public resources.
Representative Knuth? Thank you. Representative Kiffmeyer and Runbeck. Representative Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Rushy. Thank you for being here. And I've had some discussions with the organization about some other ways to encourage the philanthropy, and that would, you know, kind of work with some of our tax policies and ways that we could enhance that and work together with that. So appreciate that kind of time. The one thing, though, when I added up your numbers here, it was 1.9 and 1 billion added up to 2.9 billion. And when I calculated out, that still left a 1.2 billion left. And have you taken a look at who's paying that 1.2 billion?
Mr. Rushy?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Kiffmeyer, I'm going to have to get back to the document where you're doing the addition. Okay. I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Representative Kiffmeyer.
I'm sorry.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this might be something that certainly, Mr. Rushy, if you need to take a little more time, if you haven't done that yet, it may take you a little bit more than just doing it here while we're in committee. But I do want to just say, though, that it is an important consideration, and especially when we heard today the testimony of a mother, single parent, and some other things, that this other $1.2 billion would be paid by people like her. And I think on a moral equivalent, when you're kind of looking at that, I'm thinking of what she's done not only for herself and how she's helped others on your pocket your dollars and some other things like that. It would be really sad, and I think really it's kind of one of those situations where you think you're doing a good thing, and then you take a look at this and say, wow, really? So I don't know that you need to, I think that 1.2 is a pretty big number, and you may need to go through that a little bit more, and I want to put you on the spot, Mr. Chairman. That's just for today. That'll do.
Thank you, Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Rushy. Earlier we were referenced to the immigration studies that we have available to us, and I know for a fact the Freedom Foundation talks about that we not only are we experiencing an out-migration of people of considerable means, but we are experiencing, actually an out-migration that is even greater of people that have greater needs of public services and assistance. And I suspect that that's kind of become, because Minnesota has benefits that are more generous and programs that are more generous than a lot of our surrounding states. And I wonder if what is your position on Minnesota and its programs? Should we continue to try to be a magnet and offer better services than so many surrounding states? Because it may end up kind of tilting everything in directions we can't afford.
Mr. Rushy.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Rumbeck, I think, yes, we can afford to be better than most states, and I think that the immigration effect has been vastly overstated. The state auditor's office, the legislative auditor's office did a report on migration effects of Minnesota's public assistance programs, found it to be pretty insignificant, and most of the studies that I've seen, apart from that one, have not looked at migration out of the state. They just count people coming in and don't bother to do the net.
Representative Runbeck.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think it is worthy of continued examination, because if in fact we have the net in migration of a population that is more needy, then I think we really want to say perhaps we should strike a better balance in terms of the cost and the benefits that we offer.
Okay, now, thank you very much, Mr. Rushy, for your testimony.